Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ngarsa. Today I will present my Postmethod Pedagogy. So, first, introductions. Postmethod Pedagogy emerged as a response to the limitations of traditional method-based approach in language teaching. So, this method is developed by B. Kumara Vadivelu. The postmethod pedagogy challenge the rigid one-size-fits-all methods and the advocates for a more flexible, context-sensitive, and teachers-driven approach to English language education. So, historically, English language teachings, the ELT, was dominated by method-based approach, such as the grammar translations method, the direct method, and the audiolingual method, and later communicative language teaching or the CLT. Kumara Vadivelu, 1994, argued that no single method could be universally effective, leading to the need for a post-method perspective. So here's some key principle of post-method pedagogy. Kumara Vadivelu, 2001, introduced three fundamental pedagogic parameters that define post-method pedagogy. The first one is practicality, and then practicality, and then possibility. These parameters aim to address the limitations of traditional language teaching methods by emphasizing contextual adaptations, teachers' autonomy, and the socio-political dimensions of language learning. So the first parameters is the practicality. The principle of particularity emphasizes the idea that language teaching should be tailored to the specific sociocultural, political, and institutional context in which it occurs. This principle rejects the idea of one size fits all method. Instead, encourages an approach that is informed by the unique characteristic of learners, teachers, and the classroom environments. And here's some key aspects of the practicality. First, learners needs and backgrounds. So learners come from a diverse linguistic, cultural, and educational backgrounds, which influence their language learning process. Also, teachers should take into account students' first language backgrounds. So the L1 of the students, exposure to English and prior learning experience. And then the cultural and social context. The meaning and use of language are influenced by the culture. So teaching materials and classroom interactions should reflect the cultural realities of the learners rather than being based solely on Western norms. So for the example, the politeness strategies in English differ from those in many Asians or the African language. So requiring the teachers to consider how learners interpret the politeness in their own culture framework. So because of the difference, they need to uh, learn how to interpret the politeness in their own culture's framework. And then the classroom realities. Teaching strategies should be flexible and adaptable to the classroom conditions, including class size. So, okay, classroom realities. Uh, okay, next one is classroom realities. So, teaching strategies should be flexible and adaptable to the classroom conditions, including class size, available technology, and institutional constraints. For example, a communicative approach may work well in a small group settings, but may need modifications in large classes where the students' participation is hard to manage. So, like the large class in public school, like maybe have a 30 or 50 students in the class. So the next is the local pedagogical knowledge. Rather than imposing foreign teaching methods, educators should develop practices informed by the local educational traditions and beliefs. So, for the example, in some cultures, teacher-centered instructions is deeply ingrained. A sudden shift to the student-centered learning may cause discomfort, requiring a gradual transition. So, need to do it like what is it? Maybe like need to do it slowly, not sudden change. And the next is practicality. In practicality, the principle of practicality emphasizes the need for teachers to develop their own pedagogical knowledge based on their classroom experience, rather than depending entirely on externally imposed method or theories. Teachers should act as researchers and reflective practitioners who critically evaluate and modify teaching techniques to suit their learners. And here's some of the key aspects of the practicality. So first, teachers as decision maker. Teachers should have the autonomy to make the decisions about their teaching based on what works best in their specific classroom. So for the example, a teacher might observe that students struggle with speaking tasks due to anxiety, and then as a result incorporate confidence building exercise like peer discussions before the oral presentations, maybe like peer discussions or group discussion before the oral presentations. And then classroom research and reflections. Teachers should systematically observe, document, and analyze their classroom experiences to improve their teaching. So for the example, teacher might notice that students perform poorly and on listening task, and then decide to experiment with different types of listening exercise to identify what works best. So teachers need to do the experiment by their own with the different types of the exercise to identify what works best for the students. And next is teachers' experience versus theoretical knowledge. So while theoretical frameworks provide valuable insight, they should not dictate practice in a rigid way. Instead, theory should inform and support teachers' decision making. So for the example, a teacher trained in a communicative language teaching or a CLT may find that in their local context, student students prefer structured grammar explanations before engaging in communication activities. So the teachers can blend both approaches rather than rigidly following the CLT. So teacher might combine the both approaches. And the next is collaborations and professional development. So teachers should engage in professional dialogues, attend training programs, and share their experiences to develop their own best practices. For example, in schools where teachers collaborate, they might they may share insights about effective teaching technique for the different students group. And then the possibility. Okay, the principle of possibility highlights the social and political dimensions of language education. So language is not just a tool for communications, but also a means of shaping identity, challenging power structures, and promoting social justice. So this principle draws from critical pedagogy by Freire 1970. So this emphasizing that education should empower learners to questions and transform their realities. Here's some key aspects. First, the language identity. So learning English is not just about acquiring grammar and vocabulary. It also influences the students' self-perceptions and social positioning. For example, many learners experience the pressure to adopt a native like English accents, right? So this can create issues of linguistic discriminations and identity conflict. So teachers should promote linguistic diversity and acceptance of the different English varieties, such as the word Englishes. And next is challenging linguistic hegemony. English is often associated with the economic powers and global dominance, which can create inequalities in education and employment opportunities. For example, in many post-colonial countries, English proficiency determines access to higher educations and prestigious jobs, reinforcing class divides. Teachers should raise awareness about these issues and encourage critical discussions on language and power. Next is empowering learner through critical thinking. So instead of merely teaching students to memorize the rules, educators should help them critically analyze the social implications of the language. So, for the example, instead of simply teaching formal versus informal English, teachers can discuss how language reflect power dynamic in a different context, such as for the example, the workplace hierarchies, the gender communications, and then next, promoting social justice in language teaching. So, teaching materials should include diverse perspective and voice, rather than presenting English from purely Western-centered viewpoint. For example, instead of using the textbooks, the textbook that only showcase the British or the American cultures, the teacher can incorporate stories, article, and the discussions about the different cultures and marginalized communities. So not only from the textbook, teachers can uh, do it with the stories, the article, or the discussions about the different cultures. The next is we get into the macro strategy framework. Kumara Fadivelu 2003 proposed a macro strategic framework as part of Postmethod pedagogy. So offering the broad principles, the macro strategies that guide teachers in developing their own context-specific teaching techniques. So these macro strategies serve as flexible guidelines rather than the rigid instructions. So empowering teachers to make informed pedagogical discussions. So this framework consists of some macro strategies. It's using on a different aspect of language teaching and learning. So here's the macro strategies. First, maximizing learning opportunities. This strategy emphasizes the importance making the most of both planned and unplanned learning opportunities. So in the classroom, language learning does not only happen through structured lessons, but also through spontaneous interactions, like spontaneous interactions, right? The real life experiences and incidental learning moments. So, for the example, in the classroom, if a students ask unexpected, unexpected questions about idioms, so the teachers should not dismiss it, but instead integrate it into the lessons. So it's explaining idiomatic expressions in context. So teachers cannot avoid the question, but teachers should integrate it into the lesson. So teacher can explain about the idiomatic expressions in the context. And next is facilitating negotiated interactions. This strategy focuses on making interactions collaborative and negotiated rather than one-way communications from the teacher to the students. So effective learning occurs when students actively negotiate the meaning through communications. So for the example, instead of explaining a grammar rule directly, the teacher encourages students to discover the pattern through guided questions and peer discussion, or maybe the group discussions. So not uh, telling or not explain the grammar rule directly. Teacher can encourages the students to discover the patterns The next is minimizing perceptual mismatches. So, perceptual mismatch occurs when teachers and students hold the different expectations about language learning. This strategy focuses on aligning expectations to improve learning effectiveness. For the example, in a classroom, if the students believe that memorization is the best way to learn vocabulary, the teacher should gradually introduce contextual learning techniques and demonstrate their effectiveness through the practice. And next, activating intuitive heuristics. So, this strategy involves guiding students to discover language rules on their own rather than simply being taught the rules. It is based on the idea that learners develop an intuitive sense of language through exposure and practice. For the example in the classroom. So, instead of teaching the past tense rule explicitly, the teachers provides various past tense sentence and asks the students to identify the patterns before confirming the rules. So, teacher provide the sentence first, and then teachers can ask the students to identify the patterns before teacher confirm the rules of the past tense. So they need to find the pattern first, and then teacher confirm the pattern, the rules of the, and then fostering language awareness. So this strategy encourages learners to think critically about the language, so the structures, meaning, and function in society, rather than simply using it mechanically. So for the example, the teacher asks a student to compare formal and informal English, analyzing how register change in a different social situations. For example here, job the job interview versus texting a friend or talking to a friend, or writing a letter for teachers versus writing a letter for friends. The next, contextualizing linguistic input. So this strategy highlights the need for real world, meaningful language use instead of isolated drills and exercise. So here's the example. Instead of memorizing business English phrases, students can role play a realistic role play or workplace conversations based on case studies. So students can do the role play that realistically about the workplace conversations, but based on the case studies. Next is integrating language skill. So the language skill, such as the listening, speaking, reading, and writing, should not be taught in isolations but integrated for effective communications. For the example, students watch the news report, then summarize it orally, and then read a related article, and then last write a response. So a student do the listening when watch the news report, and then speaking and summarizing, and then reading when they read a related article, and then write a response for writing. And the next is promoting learner autonomy. So learners should take responsibility for their own learning rather than depending entirely on the teachers. For the example, the teacher assigns a project-based task where the students can choose the topic and then research it independently, and then present the finding. So present the result. So teachers can give the students this assignment. Next is a rising cultural consciousness. So learners should develop an understanding of cultural norms and differences in the communications. So for the example, students can compare the greeting in the different cultures and discuss how the social norms shape their communications. And the next, ensuring social relevance. Language learning should be connected to real world social issues and students' interest. So, for the example, the lessons on persuasive writing includes analyzing the advertisement and political speech. So, the next is The implications for ELT. So in post-method pedagogy, as proposed by Kumarava Divelu, 2001 and 2003, uh, he offers a transformative approach to English language teaching in ELT. So it moves away from rigid perspective method and instead emphasizing a teacher autonomy, contextually sensitive and critical awareness. So the implications of post-method pedagogy affect multiple dimensions of ELT, including in the curriculum design, teachers' roles, the classroom interactions, the assessment, and the professional development. It this redefines the teacher's role, transform uh, classroom interactions, revolutionize assessment, and encourages learner autonomy. So this approach ensures that ELT is dynamic, inclusive, and socially relevant. So here for the first, the teacher roles. So teachers act as a strategic decision maker, adapting their teaching based on classroom realities. So they become researchers in their own classroom and then using reflections and experimentations. So they serve as facilitators of the learner's autonomy. So helping students take charge of their learning. And then learning roles. So learners are active participants rather than passive recipients of knowledge. So they are active now, not passive one anymore. So they are encouraged to engage in critical thinking about language and society. So they become co-constructor of knowledge, negotiating meaning with teachers and peers. So they actively negotiate or discuss the meaning or the material with the teachers and the peers or in a group. Then the next is curriculum and materials. So textbooks should be supplemented or modified to fit the local context, right? So uh, the authentic material, like the news article, social media, or real life conversations in the local, of course. So like a task-based problem-solving approach aligns with the post-method principle. So need to using more authentic materials. And then the next is assessments practice. So assessment should be formative and process-oriented, not just summative. So self-assessment and peer assessment foster learner autonomy. Teachers should assess both linguistic competence and communicative effectiveness here. So it's not only like traditional assessments, right? So here the teachers can do the self-assessment and the peer assessment for the learners. Okay, post-method pedagogy has revolutionized English language teaching, right, in ELT. So a lot of benefit that we can conclude from the explanation before. But like any approach, it has both benefit and weakness. The weaknesses in ELT. So the first, the lack of clear guidelines can be challenging for teachers. So here, unlike the traditional methods that provide step-by-step instructions, post-method pedagogies like a fixed framework, making it difficult for teachers to implement. So this may impact some teachers, especially like the novice teachers. They may struggle to develop effective strategies without the structure's guidance. For the example, new teachers may feel overwhelmed without a clear lesson structure and may struggle to create meaningful classroom activities. Because of the lack clear guidelines, teachers will hard to implement this method. The next requires highly skilled and reflective teachers. So teachers need strong analytically skills, adaptability, and experience to implement post-method pedagogy effectively. So not all teachers may have the necessary training or confidence to modify teaching approaches based on students' needs. So not all teachers have the well trained, right? Let's say well training or the confidence to modify the teaching approach based on the students' needs, of course. For the example, teachers unfamiliar with actions, research, or classroom-based innovations may find it difficult to create context-specific materials. Uh, the teacher, like the novice teachers that unfamiliar with the action research or the classroom-based, will struggle, of course, and will difficult to teach in the classroom to create context, uh, the specific context for the materials for the students, of course. And the next can be time consuming for the teachers. Like post-method pedagogies encourage uh, the personalized lesson plans, right? So teachers may spend more time designing activities and assessing students' needs. For the teachers, this will consume the time for of the teachers, of course, a lot of time that will consume by them. This is will increase the workload that can lead teachers to burn out. So, for the example, instead of following a pre-made textbook lessons, a teacher has to research and create customized activities, which takes additional time. Teacher will take more time to create the customized activities and then next requires continuous professional development. So teachers need to regularly update their knowledge through training, research, and reflections. So without a proper training, teachers may refer to traditional methods due to familiarity. For the example, a teacher who is not trained in sociopragmatics may struggle to integrate critical discussions on language and power. And then next, can be challenging for large or diverse classrooms. So in large classes with diverse students' backgrounds, individualizing instructions can be difficult because teachers may struggle to address each student's specific needs, right? So, for example, teachers handling 50 students in a public school may find it impossible to personalize lessons for each learner. So, because of the large number of the students here, especially like in the public schools, teachers will struggle or will feel it impossible to personalize the lessons for each learners. And the next is assessment can be more complex. So the traditional grading system focuses on clear-cut right or wrong answers. So while post-method pedagogy encourages subjective evaluations through project and peer assessment. So teachers and administrators may find it difficult to measure progress using standard metrics, right? Because not like the traditional method grading system, they only focus on a right or wrong answer, right? In post-method pedagogy, it's more subjective evaluations to the projects and the peer assessment. For the example, instead of a grammar multiple choice test, students write an opinion essay, which require qualitative assessments rather than simple scoring. Like if teachers do the test with the grammar multiple choice, students can just choose the right or wrong answer. Though they don't know where is the right answers, they will choose it, right. So if the answer is wrong, then wrong, no score, no point. If the answer is right, there's a point. It's the simple scoring. And then to write the opinion essay, this require the qualitative assessments, not as simple as the multiple choice test before, right? Last part of my presentations, the conclusions. The conclusions. So, post-method pedagogy represents a significant paradigm shift in ELT, like moving away from rigid method top-down and the perspective teaching methods towards a more teacher-driven, context-sensitive, and social empowering approach. So, unlike the traditional methods that impose a one-size-fits-all frameworks, the post-method pedagogy encourages educators to develop their own strategies based on the unique needs of their students and teaching environments. This approach make educators develop develop their own strategies based on the unique needs, right, from the student itself. So one of the most transformative aspects of post-method pedagogies is the emphasis on teachers' autonomy. So teachers are no longer seen as passive implementers of pre-designed methods, but teachers rather as active decision makers and reflective practitioners who critically analyze and adapt their teaching strategies. So this autonomy enables teachers to personalize the instructions, integrate integrate to the real world context, and foster a more engaging and meaningful learning experience for the students. Similarly, post-method pedagogy empowers learners by promoting autonomy, motivations, and critical thinking. Instead of being passive recipients of knowledge. Students are encouraged to take the active ownership of their learning process through self-directed activities, interactive discussions, and problem-solving tasks. This student-centered approach helps develop not only linguistic competence but also communications skills, cultural awareness, and the ability to analyze language in social context. So by embracing the principle of post-method pedagogy, uh, English language educators or the teachers can create more inclusive, effective, and transformative learning experiences. Give the students a good experience in learning English, right? So this approach foster a dynamic and responsive ELT environment where the teachers and students work together to negotiate meaning, explore diverse linguistic perspective, and challenge traditional powers structures in language learning. So ultimately, post-method pedagogy serve as a progressive and empowering model that aligns with the evolving needs of the globalized multicultural and multilingual society like nowadays, right? So by this method, it's not only teacher that do the things, but also students. They need the responsibility to their task too, to their learning process, right? Okay. Thank you for listening my presentations. That's all for my presentations. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.